right, it's morning huddle time. Good morning.
No, I'm not saying it works.
I wish you Godspeed. I Godspeed with all of that. I think that's really, really nice. I'm not sure what kind of success you're going to have with that today, because the world, my friend, has changed.
Right. Latin American construction workers, they have different needs. They have completely different needs.
These awards have a huge criteria that you have to fill out, and they usually have a community service or community relations portion.
Makes them, the most productive with a high performance value, and sometimes it's 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah. Funny, isn't it? Yeah, not for me.
Not for me.
At 11 o'clock, I am guaranteed to be snoring. So. Good morning. It is morning huddle time. I'm Chad Prinky here, as always, with my co-host and producer, Stacy Holzinger. Stacy, how are you this morning?
I'm doing good. How are you guys?
I'm doing great. We got Kevin Henderson here with us this morning. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Can't complain myself. Happy to be here and excited to do this.
Kevin's joining us from Dallas, Texas. Kevin is a
I was just going to say,
this isn't Eric Pacifici. Kevin Henderson is Eric's much smarter, much better looking, more talented partner in SMB Law Group. Eric had a last minute emergency pop up, and Kevin stepped right in to fill the space. And I'm confident that we're going to have a fantastic show with Kevin. Thank you so much for stepping in and doing a solid for your partner and for us.
Yeah, absolutely. While I appreciate the kind words, I don't know the fact that my partner's calendar filled up and mine was wide open at the last minute speaks too much to that. But super excited to be here. So
look, you got your priorities straight. You're on the huddle.
Right.
He's
Indeed.
not. That's the deal. Well, we're super glad to have you. Today's conversation is really going to revolve around a topic that you are expert in, and I'll preface the topic, and then I'd like to give a little context to our audience for sort of who you are and how you got to where you are, so that we have some perspective on you. But the focus of today's conversation is what you should be doing if you are a contractor thinking about how and when and if to sell your business. And so SMB Law Group has a really specific specialty practice focused on that type of work. But I'll let you expand on that, Kevin.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is our whole focus. So I'm an M&A lawyer by training, been a lawyer for a long time. I started doing kind of large cap M&A at the large law firms, right? Went to Wall Street out of law school and did the whole, work for JP Morgan and AT&T and Halliburton and all that kind of stuff, the who's who of public companies and things like that. But have always kind of had an interest in entrepreneurship and small business and things like that. My partner, Eric, who I was filling in for, I've known Eric for many years. He got involved with this community I didn't know existed on Twitter called SMB Twitter and this concept called ETA, Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition. And I was looking for a change in my career, had been transitioning out of the large law firms. And he kind of called me up one day. He's like, hey, have you heard of ETA? This whole ecosystem of people like leaving Wall Street and buying small businesses, just incredibly talented people buying and rolling up small businesses and just doing incredible things. It's like our traditional M&A practice, but $5 million instead of $5 billion. And, obviously M&A is not a new concept. I've been doing it my whole career, but this whole thesis of the small business world was kind of new to me. And so we sort of jumped in, started participating in the Twitter community and immediately realized our DMs were blowing up with, hey, I've got a $8 million deal under LOI, can't find a lawyer, do you have someone to recommend? And we all of a sudden thought, man, we're onto something. There's like a dearth of high quality, experienced M&A practitioners servicing this space. So that's how SMB Law Group was born. So we launched last year. We're coming up on our 1-year anniversary in May. And it's been like a rocket ship. And you know, we can talk a little bit more about M&A more broadly and what we're seeing in the market and things like that. But what you see on the front page of the Wall Street Journal and on Fortune magazine and things like that about M&A is just drastically different than what we're seeing in the small business world.
Wow, man. Now I'm dying to hear more about that.
Exciting time to be part of it.
All right, cool. So, Stacy, I want to give you the space that you need to focus on our virtual audience so that we can gather questions and bring those to Kevin here in the last few minutes of the show. So I'll bring you. We'll bring you back as per usual.
All right.
And Kevin, let's dive in. I want to start there. That's a fascinating sort of intro. So juxtapose that. What are we hearing, and what are we hearing on the walls from the Wall Street Journal, and what are we seeing really play out in the M&A world for small business?
Yeah, I think when you look broadly in M&A commentary, you're seeing a lot of discussion about the market just being down, right? We've been in sort of a really hot M&A market the past couple of years. We had kind of the immediate sort of economic dip from the pandemic, and then sort of came out of it like a rocket ship. And 2021 and 2022, fiscal years were just absolute banner years for M&A broadly. And you saw mega mergers happening, right? I already referenced Twitter, and we all know what happened there, right? One of the largest tech transactions to occur in the past several years.
I still can't tell if it was an accident.
Nobody knows. It's hard to tell, but it was a super hot market. But as interest rates started to rise, we all know what's happening with interest rates, right? Very acutely, I assume. All that started to change. And so in the M&A world, and I'm seeing a question pop up, what does M&A stand for? I apologize for glossing right over it. M&A is the kind of legal and business jargon for mergers and acquisitions. So we're talking about buying and selling businesses when we're referring to the M&A world. It's kind of fallen off a cliff. And so you're seeing commentary. In fact, I wish I remember where it was, but I just saw a headline a day or two ago that I want to say said M&A volume coming into the end of the first quarter 2023 is down like 30 to 40% over last year. Right? It's just hit an absolute wall.
Yeah, everybody's the narrative is everybody's sitting on their wallets, everybody's waiting, everybody's scared. That's and it's a similar narrative to what we're seeing for whatever it's worth in terms of construction, new starts, and things like that. Totally. It's a very similar narrative where people are saying like everybody's holding up and sitting on their wallet. But again, I think if you look, boots on the ground, that's a macro picture, but it's not what's actually happening in some specific markets. So my guess is that's your experience as well.
Well, I think what we've seen is it sort of precipitated the movement that we were already seeing to small business. And again, like I referenced a second ago, people buying and selling small businesses is not a new phenomenon, right? This has happened for decades, right? I mean, this is a story as old as time. What's different and what we've seen in the last decade that we haven't seen to the extent before is a lot of times those small businesses, particularly in the trades and things like that, were going to skilled tradesmen, right? An HVAC person does an apprenticeship, they build a good career doing HVAC, then they eventually buy the company from their dad or their uncle or a third party or whatever, and they continue on owning an HVAC company. What we've started to see is a transition where people working at Carlisle after getting a Harvard MBA are realizing like, I'm killing myself on Wall Street. I can move back home to Wetumpka, Minnesota, or, wherever it is,
right?
Buy an HVAC company for $4 million that's doing $1 million of profit. I can be a CEO at age 29 and put my business skills to use, buying and rolling up more HVAC businesses and build like a really interesting, sophisticated business that I own 80% of, right? And so we started to see that transition, which is what really turned on the small business buying market. And I think we're seeing and will continue to see that accelerate, right? As this large cap market is sort of hitting a wall. You've got headlines every day of big tech laying off thousands of workers, right? Banks laying off thousands of workers. What are they going to go do, right? When they can leave Google, move out of San Francisco and go back to South Dakota and buy a roofing company for $8 million and great quality of life for their family, and, you know, incredible income, and use an SBA loan that's guaranteed, you know, requires little money out of pocket. It's an amazing opportunity. And we're seeing more and more people wanting to do this. A lot of younger people, a lot of different profile than we've seen in the past looking at these businesses. So from our perspective and where we're sitting, we're as busy as we've ever been. I mean, I worked late into the night last night on transactions. We've got dozens of transactions actively going in our firm, and kind of no side of that slowing down, even while the M&A market more broadly has sort of fallen off a cliff. So it's a really interesting inflection point.
It's fascinating. I've got so many thoughts rolling through my mind. One of those thoughts being, you just made that sound really appealing. I'm announcing now that we're shutting down. No,
terrible idea, Chad.
It just sounds really appetizing, and I can see exactly what you're talking about. They're killing themselves on Wall Street. They're working at firms where they're grinding out 80-hour work weeks for an income and no ownership. And, you know, but these are high potential people with, you know, strong capabilities who are willing to work 80-hour weeks. So if they're going to go work an 80-hour week, why not own it? And you know.
And I think that's the biggest,
eventually not work an 80-hour week. Right?
I think that's the biggest differentiator, Chad, with like who is really successful at doing this, right? Because it's really easy for me, especially as a service provider, to come on a podcast and make this sound like this is like the next gold rush, right? Like this is just the amazing, like, why would you not be doing this? Well, you know, your listeners are probably listening to me like laughing, saying like, yeah, I want to see that Harvard business grad when two of his roofers call in sick and he's got to climb up 3 stories and start, you know, hammering nails through a roof. Like then let's see how your Harvard business grad. Totally valid criticism. And we see that a lot too, of sort of people coming off of Wall Street and out of these traditional like banking and you know, kind of big tech jobs of like, I'll buy an HVAC company. Like, how hard could this be? Right. Like, you know, plink down a small down payment and be printing money, only to find out 100-hour work weeks and, you know, managing people and managing customers and marketing. And you get that bad review on Google and Yelp, and all of a sudden you're triaging, you know, bad PR and, you know, a lot of our clients are in for a rude awakening by the same token.
I mean, look, arrogance is always a bad leadership trait, you know, so if you know, it's what I think where you're going with that is to say that the people who are really going to be successful, they possess a certain mindset. They possess a certain work ethic. And have you seen some of this play out and have any perspective on that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And you can start to kind of pick out when you meet people and hear from people, like, that's going to be interesting to see where that one goes. Or, you know, this gal's going to do something incredible, right? Like you can start to see these personality traits of kind of who's got the tenacity to do it, right? Like, yeah, you've got the book and finance smarts, but you've also got the people skills. You're able to, you know, interview and, you know, kind of manage people and things like that, which is just so much different from, you know, being an analyst on Wall Street or whatever. We actually see a lot of people with the same profile, highly educated, highly qualified people, but that are veterans, right? Like this is such a popular space for veterans to get into, because all of a sudden they come out of Wharton and Harvard and whatever, and like great business backgrounds, but they've got that work ethic and team building and leadership skills that they developed in the military. Every time I meet any of those, you know, men and women, it's like, I'm like immediately jazzed. Like these guys are going to do something incredible, because it's like the perfect storm of that amazing work ethic, the tenacity, the willingness to roll up sleeves and like clean toilets in your commercial cleaning business when someone calls in sick, even while your real skill set is in, you know, advanced financial analysis and forensic accounting.
Well, and that's ultimately, it's what it takes to be successful as a small business owner, period. And is you know, that's the barrier to entry. The barrier to entry for being an entrepreneur is a willingness to do whatever it takes
exactly right
to be successful. So I want to shift gears. That's our audience, right? Our
Absolutely.
audience are contractors. There are lots of business owners. There are lots of second generation up and coming or third generation up and coming business owners, folks who are going to be a part of this, you know, landscape, who are a part, you know, who are in our audience. And then there are lots of high potential people who are working inside the industry who one day probably will have, you know, either an ownership share in the business they're working in, or maybe someday, you know, a business of their own. And what we've been talking about to this point is perhaps a kind of, you know, surprise type of buyer that we weren't even thinking about. Let's talk a little bit more to the sell side, to the people who are looking to, you know, get their business ready for sale. What's the number one? Oh, not number one. I'm not going to peg it like that. But what are the things that you would be really focused on? Let's pretend you owned a drywall contractor today, and you knew that you wanted to create an exit 5 years, 10 years, somewhere in that time frame. What are the things you would be doing to position yourself for exit?
Yeah, I mean, and timeline becomes so important because it changes if your personal circumstances are such that like you're going to eye a very soon exit versus I want a longer term 5 or 10 year strategy, right? Yeah. That's going to inform what you do. So I'm as a seller, I'm thinking about a lot of things, but first and foremost, I'm thinking about maximizing value, right? And all of these businesses generally trade on a multiple of EBITDA, right? And if you're not familiar with that term, it's earnings before interest, tax, depreciation, and amortization. It's
another way of saying, it's a big, long, complicated way of saying profit.
That's right. That's right. It's a profit metric that's derived from your financial statements. Yep. And all of these businesses trade on a multiple of that number, right? So if you're $2.5 million of EBITDA, you know, profit, whatever we'll do profit to keep it simple.
Yep.
You know, $2.5 million of profit, and you're going to be eyeing a 5x multiple, right? You're looking at a $12.5 million exit, right? Yep. I'm picking easy, low round numbers. The first thing I'm thinking of is what can we do? Obviously, honestly, and above board, and we can get to that in a second, but what can we do to maximize that value, right? And there's really only two things you can do, right? You can increase revenue and you can decrease expenses.
Got it. So pause. There you're saying if our focus becomes how do I boost that 2.5? How do I get that 2.5 to be 4? How do I get it to be 6? In above board, you know, legal ways, you can boost revenue or cut expenses.
That's right. Yeah. Yep. I mean, those are essentially your two choices. Now, how you go about doing that, you've got a million choices, right? Back to what I'm talking about, part of that strategy could be roll up more businesses.
Acquisitions.
Right? Yep. You could expand to a new state and go, if you're a roofing company in Nevada, go buy a roofing company in Utah. If you're a roofing company in Reno, go buy a roofing company in Las Vegas. Organic growth. You're a roofing company in Reno, open another branch in Las Vegas or whatever it may be. So you can increase your revenue by expanding your territory, right? Yep. You can do a marketing push to increase just revenue through your current operations. There are a number of ways you can go about that become very tactical from a business perspective, less from a legal perspective. So, someone like Chad is probably better situated for that answer than I am. But then the flip side, your expenses, right? Where can you start to optimize and streamline? particularly as your organization grows in complexity, right? So one of the things we talk a lot with clients about who are in growth mode, eyeing, that 5 to 10 year exit with a roll-up strategy, again, back to this acquisition strategy. Once you start to add more entities, right? You're that Nevada roofing company, and then you go buy a second roofing company in Utah. All of a sudden, you've got 2 companies who probably have their own sales function. They probably have their own bookkeeping function. They probably have their own kind of scheduling function and things like that.
They're all using their own softwares.
What sort of optimization is there to get on the same platform, right? Yep. To have a unified back office where all the phone calls for both entities are going into. So now instead of 6 employees in each location, so 12 across 2, you've got one back office call center with 8 people, right?
Yeah,
so
sort of shared GNL.
Your shared service model.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Very, very common way we work with clients in growth mode, trying to kind of maximize and grow their top line revenue in a way that's going to increase their profitability to be looking for exit. So that's probably the number one thing I'm looking at.
If you want to, the first thing you're focused on is maximizing that profit number. And if you want to maximize that profit number, make sure you have compelling growth strategies. Make sure you have really, really effective, efficient cost management strategies. Precisely. So that you're maxing that profit number. So, here's one of the things that I spend a lot of time working on and talking about, but I really sincerely wonder how much this comes up in acquisition conversations that you're a part of. I'm always telling the founder, typically or whoever's leading,
current owner.
Yep. Good. I'm always telling them, look, you can lead all of this strategic expansion. You can come up with all the ideas of buying the roofing company in Utah. You can be the big picture deal maker, and you can, be the brain and the energy and the manager behind all of that work. But what you have got to make sure is that you are not personally central to any of the day-to-day operations.
Can I get standing ovations? Is that a lot? Yeah.
Yeah. As long as the camera will follow. Yeah.
That's right.
But so because my thought process is, and what I've seen play out too many times, is that it's not an exit at all. It's actually just selling your business to become an employee in the business.
That's 100% right. It's either that or it's diminishing your value, because guess what your buyer has to do when they evaluate those financials in order to determine the purchase price of the business? They all of a sudden have to replace you. Yeah. And you're not necessarily a salary line in the P&L, right? So all of a sudden your profitability dips down because they look at the business and say, with the amount of work you're doing, I got to pay $300,000 to 2 other employees, right? A general manager and whatever, to replace how integral you are to this business. $300,000 on a 5x multiple, that $12.5 million business just dropped by $1.5 million. It's now an $11 million business, right?
Yeah, right.
So,
well, I was just going to say, and furthermore, I don't even know if those 2 dudes can do the job. Those 2 people that we're talking about bringing in, I don't even know if those people can do the job.
Exactly right. Yeah. In fact, I think I even have a YouTube video where I talk about exactly this issue. I mean, you are 100% spot on. One of the other, the second thing I would have said, and you beat me to the punchline, is you have to make sure that your enterprise can run without you. Yeah. Otherwise, too much value gets left on the table. And it's unbelievably important, particularly if you have that longer term vision and the ability to kind of strategically plan out 5 or 10 years. That's not to say 3 months from now, all of your sales and all of this and all of that need to be off to other employees, right? You've got the benefit of time to kind of work on a transition plan. But if you aren't strategic about implementing that transition plan, you're going to find yourselves 3 years down the road doing exactly the same thing with nothing transitioned and working 100 hours a week. And, the business will fail if you take vacation. It makes you unacquirable.
Yep. Agreed. I'll make a kind of a statement here that I don't want you to agree with me on if you know what I mean, right? Like really,
fair enough.
Really, no worries.
No standing ovation on this one.
Well, hey, or standing ovation, and then I'll be like, hey, 2 for 2. But no, I think I personally feel like we are in a golden era for what you're talking about right this very moment, and that we are not going to be in this golden era for more than a decade. I think the next 5 to 10 years really is a critical time for the small contractor, in specific the construction industry, right? Like leaving out all of the other small businesses, and but for the small contractor to make a decision to either get big and start to modernize and pull in efficiency creating technologies and things that will enable you to bring the same level of quality and drive down costs, because that's what's going to be happening. The bigger companies are going to have a lower. Yeah, I know it's kind of surprising to people, but they're actually going to have lower overhead, and that there's really compelling reasons to think that is going to be coming down the tracks. And so they'll if you're a small contractor, I think you're in a window right now where you've got to either get big or you should really, really consider selling before the window kind of closes on the little guy. And I don't know, maybe that's alarmist, and maybe 20 years ago people were saying the same thing. I don't know. I wasn't doing this 20 years ago, only 15 years ago. but I would say over the past 5 years, this sense has really grown for me. I just wonder what your take is on that.
No, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, this stuff goes in cycles, right? So the transition will always be there. Construction will always be there. I do think we're in an interesting moment with just the sheer volume of kind of the retiring baby boomer generation that overwhelmingly owns and runs small businesses, right? Small businesses are not as popular with millennials as they are with baby boomers. It's just not, right? The numbers don't bear that out. So there's a lot more value tied up in 55 to 70-year-old business owners right now than there are 25 to 45-year-old owners. And so we are in a really interesting inflection period with that kind of generational shift as that generation is eyeing the next phase of life and looking to retire. There's more value that we see changing hands over the next decade than there has been in several decades past, and very well maybe for several decades in the future. So I think you're spot on.
You're looking at it from through a different lens, but the lens agrees. Like
exactly.
My lens is the construction industry is not going to reward you for staying small in the next 10 years. Your lens is the sheer amount of need to exit is it's
going to drive a lot of that consolidation anyway. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Right. Because the next generation behind the baby boomers just is less interested in being an entrepreneur.
That's right. And an interesting and I know we're coming up against the wall here, but I think it bears saying, and because there's probably people listening or that will be listening in this boat. There are a lot of opportunities to roll up these businesses where you don't have to fully exit, right? And so there are a lot of people who hit a wall in their business and are self-aware enough to admit, I've hit a wall, right? I may be really great roofer, but I'm terrible at finance and marketing, and I'm not going to get to that next level without partnering with people that can take me there. We do a lot of transactions where businesses like that, a $10 million roofing business, gets rolled up into a micro private equity fund or something that wants to do one of these consolidation models. Yep. And will use that business and owner and give them equity, 30% of the fund or whatever, to be the operating partner for those finance and business partners that want to grow that model. And I always tell people that resist that, right? 100% of $10 million is not as great as 30% of $100 million.
Yep.
And so that's a different way to be thinking about. A lot of people think about exits as true full exits. I own 100% of my business. I'm going to sell it and leave and own 0%. But there's even other ways to be part of this sort of consolidation that you're talking about, that you kind of have no choice to either get bigger or not, it doesn't mean you have to get out of the business. There's really unique opportunities to kind of roll up into these bigger enterprises and continue with your business, take a smaller piece of equity in a much, much larger pie, and still do really well for yourself for the next 10 or 20 years.
Man, that is a fantastic perspective to add to that. It's not all or nothing. And
totally.
And there are lots and lots of avenues. So
we in the startup world, it's called the founder's dilemma, and founders notoriously hate giving up equity until they can realize 100% of $5 million is terrible in comparison to 50% of $100 million. And once they can get past that, they realize, wow, there's a lot of value to be gained by bringing in partners and outside capital and outside expertise. And anyway, these
closely held family businesses, man, that is the construction industry. There's a lot of minds to change, and I
see it every day.
Yeah.
I see it every day.
All right, Stacy, I know we have questions from the audience. Let's try to cover at least a couple of these before we have to wrap it up.
Okay. Apologies to who this is, because on my front, it just is saying LinkedIn user. So are there any classes out there that can help the young tradesmen understand the path to business ownership?
So I'm gonna take a quick stab at like just clarifying this one. Another layer for you, Kevin, is just I have watched personally on several different occasions clients of mine where the owner is actively looking to create a succession opportunity inside their business, and they can't find anybody who wants to own it.
Yep.
And I think a major part of the reason they can't find anybody who wants to own it is they don't know what it means. It's all extraordinarily stressful. The mere thought of owning the business looks hard. That dude's making it look hard, not easy. Right? The owner is not making this look easy or fun. Are there where would you put these? What kind of education can people pursue to help them to understand what it is to be a business owner and to get into that mindset where it's not scary?
100%. And it's a great question. There's the obvious ones, right? Take some courses, whether or not it's a full degree or not, at a university, right? Whether it's a community college, university near you.
What kind of courses?
Yeah.
Anything on business, right? Any business courses on management and things like that. And you have to vet it out a little bit, right? Like if you live in Boston and want to go audit a course at Harvard Business School, right, it's probably going to be way more academic than what you're talking about.
Right.
But if you want to learn more about business finance and how to understand financial statements and things like that, and you go to a local community college and audit a business finance course, you're probably going to get a lot better kind of hands-on practical, here's what a balance statement or a balance sheet and a profit and loss statement is and how to read it and things like that. So you can start building those fundamentals. I always tell people who are kind of new and thinking about transitioning into business and business ownership, 100% the best skill that you can develop is accounting. And if people want to disagree with me, feel free, hit comments, send me hate emails or whatever, but it's a hill I will die on. Accounting is your best friend. And it's the gateway, because accounting then opens up so many more of those questions that you don't even know exist. As you start to go through a profit and loss statement and you start to dig into, well, what makes up interest expense and things like that, that opens you into corporate finance and how you structure corporate finance. What is your employee overhead line item and your wage costs and things like that. That gets you into all sorts of employee taxation questions and how to structure employees versus independent contract, right? In addition to just having the raw financial knowledge of knowing how to know what profitability is and things like that, it's a gateway to so many more of those additional questions to learn managing a business. And so again, it's a hill I'll die on. Accounting.
Okay.
Love it. You sound like McKinsey.
That's right.
That's right.
Can you speak
let's fit in one more.
Okay, one more?
Yeah.
Well, can you speak to the way technology is helping position companies for sale or to sell?
Yeah, that's such a great and interesting question, particularly because my practice is mostly buy side. And so 80% of the time I'm representing buyers. And I will tell you, one of the number one value adds that buyers look at when looking at a target business is the ability for better technology implementation and optimization. And I can't tell you the amount of times I've closed a $10 million commercial landscaping deal where the customer records are handed over in a spiral notebook that's written in pen and pencil by the owner where he's scheduling appointments, right? No CRM, no technology. And it's those types of things where a reasonably sophisticated buyer looks at and is like, oh my God, there's probably 30% more customer conversion and upsell I can do just by having a good CRM and the ability to track like customers and leads and things like that better. So flip that to the sell side. What does that mean for you, right? This takes me back to what I was saying earlier. The first thing I would be thinking about is how to increase your revenue and decrease your expenses. I mean, there's one of the best things you can do to drive value over the next couple of years. Optimize a new website, right? Make sure you're using high quality CRM, right? That lowers your employee overhead costs because you're implementing technology tools. There's buyers are always looking for that value where they can buy on a lower multiple and implement that technology to get the value themselves. If you're able to implement it as a seller, I'm honestly, the numbers are crazy. I follow up with sellers all the time, 4, 5, 6 months after closing that are like, man, we just hit 40% additional revenue over last year just by like kind of injecting some new life, revamping the website and deploying some technology. And just think of what a 40% increase in top line revenue over the next year or two would do to your multiple if you were the one implementing those technology changes. So that was a very long answer to say technology is at the heart of driving that first thing I said you should be looking at, increase your profitability. It's the lowest hanging fruit in most businesses out there.
I absolutely love it. And I think for contractors, the constant balancing act is how do I grow the top line and still be able to perform that work? Exactly. And technology can play a role in helping to expedite that, helping to make that,
it's a balancing act. And, the same strategies don't work for everyone. I'll tell you, in our law firm that we run virtually, a lot of even small law firms, we're 7 lawyers. A lot of law firms like that pay a receptionist $40,000, $50,000 a year. I have an electronic receptionist that costs me $9.99 a month.
Right.
The automated AI voice, right? Like think of what that does to our profitability if we're thinking about exiting, right? And so those are the things to be looking at. Things like that are tough though, right? I mean, at that point you're cutting an employment spot, right? A lot of business owners have a lot of allegiance, for better or for worse, to their employees. They want to see their employees taken care of. So again, not one size fits all for all cases. And I'm not necessarily saying profitability is the end all be all. But it is a very, very important factor when you're eyeing exit, and there are things you can do and things you can balance to improve that profitability.
A very profitable company with a terrible culture will not be profitable for long.
100%.
So 100%. All the choices that you make have to always be counterbalanced with what's this going to do to morale, what's this going to do to our team, exactly. And so, all right, I could literally talk to Kevin all day, and from the sound of it, your schedule would sort of accommodate that.
That's right. I'm kidding. I'm actually hemorrhaging with deals right now.
I know you are.
Which is exciting and frustrating all at the same time.
I was just giving you a hard time because of your partners.
No, I get it.
Lack of it. But no, this is it really has been wonderful to have this conversation. Super engagement from our audience. Folks, if you are in the audience now and you're like, I need more on this, Kevin, how should people reach you? How should they reach out and connect with you if they want to talk more?
Yeah, I'm on most socials at K Henderson Co. Instagram is the only exception where I'm .co, but I 98% of the time I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn. So you message there, participate there, shoot me DM, whatever. Then obviously, direct. Our website is smblaw.group. My email's kevin@smblaw.group. Don't be a stranger. If I can be helpful, if I can answer questions, whatever it may be, would love to hear from as many of your listeners and audience that would like to reach out. So,
well, I'll take you up on it. I have a whole bunch of things. I have a whole bunch of things I want to talk to you about, Kevin. I think, what you do and what I do can link up just perfectly. So I look forward to doing that moving forward. So, Stacy, is there anything else you want to say to Kevin before we wrap?
No, it was a great discussion. If we have any last questions that we didn't get to in the chat, Kevin, if you don't mind, when we log off, if you could answer them, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, would love to.
All right, thanks.
Sweet. Yep. All right, cool. Kevin, thanks again. Stacy, let's do some wrap up here. Talk about next week. We have the same time, obviously, 9 a.m. next Tuesday. We have episode 47, which is connecting VDC to business goals with Darren Young. We're going to be talking about BIM and virtual design and construction and how to overlay all of that stuff, not just for the benefit of building a better building and a more efficient, construction phase, but also in ways that really, further the business goals of the reason that the building's being built in the first place. Darren's got a ton of experience to share with us, spanning construction and manufacturing and bringing those things together, and that'll be a blast to dig into with him. As always, email us to be added to our weekly mailing list. We hammer this home, and our mailing list grows every week. So please do that. And if you or someone you know has an important story to tell about creating positive change in the building industry, please reach out to us. You can email me, cprinky@wellbuiltconsulting.com, or stacyh@steeltoecom.com. And we would love to consider that person for our upcoming season, which starts in the summer. Stacy, what have I left out?
And if you're attending the NAWIC Spring Forum on May 6th, we'll be doing a live broadcast. Our season ends the end of April, but then the following week on a Saturday around 12 to 2, we're doing that live broadcast.
Sorry, it's Friday that we're doing the live broadcast.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah,
sorry
it's
about
Friday
that.
It's all good. But we'll the NAWIC conference in Washington, D.C. Correct. If you're there, stop by the booth, jump on the show, make it awkward. We'd appreciate it. All right. Thank you so much. Stacy, anything else?
That's it. Thank you. We'll see you next week.
Have a great week, guys.
Yeah.